right, let's go ahead and get started. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Because this is a webinar, everybody is muted. And because it's muted, it's going to be very boring. All you get is to listen to me, which is not exciting. However, it's year-end stuff, so I'm going to make this as exciting as it possibly can be because everybody loves year-end stuff, especially when we start talking about 1099s. That doesn't bring any angst to anybody here in AP. So with that being said, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please post them in the chat. I have a tendency to start talking a little fast or getting too sidetracked. Please feel free to make any comments in there that you want and bring me back in if I start getting out of control here, okay? So with that being said, here we go. On our agenda for today, we are going to talk about with the Sage Intacct things that you don't have to do. We're going to talk about our year-end preparation. We're going to talk about fiscal year-end close process, create fiscal year reporting periods, and then everybody's favorite topic, 1099 preparation and processing. So far, sorry about that. Also, we're going to go over any frequently asked questions. There's already been a list of them that we compile every year I do this. So if you ask any good questions, your question will be on there for next year. No call outs to that. We just post the question, not who did it, because some people would love that and some not so much. So let's talk about first about things you don't have to do. Now, I haven't seen any comments in the chat yet, so hopefully everybody's awake and paying attention. And I guess I haven't spoken too quickly yet, but give me a chance. I'll mess that up here before long. Things you don't have to do. So with Sage Intacct, unlike other systems, you do no longer have to worry about backing up your data. As you already know, everything is online. You don't have to worry about a disaster recovery plan, again, because everything is online and there's redundant backups through Sage Intacct. You don't have to purge history or lose access to detailed transactions. More than likely, your implementer, when you were going through, said, hey, let's make some custom views in this because it's going to show you every bill that you've ever entered since the beginning of time. I'm working with a customer right now who's been in this for close to 16 years. There are a lot of bills that happen in there. Now, with a lot of other systems, you have to purge that history out or the file gets too big. We don't have to do that. Now, with that being said, because there are a lot of bills that have been paid, a lot of invoices that have been received, if you're stuck looking at all of them, consider making a custom view where you can filter some of those guys out. If you don't know what that means, shame on your implementer, or shame on us if we didn't listen, but feel free to reach out to me or to any of the other consultants in here. We can help you with that because there's a lot of good benefit from that. We no longer have to install those yearly service updates or patches to get our year-end documents. Hey, we have a year-end patch. We have to do this so that we can post our 1099s. All of that happens for you in Intacct. And again, we have our quarterly post patches that go through. And in theory, nothing bad ever happens after that, which is about 90% accurate. Every once in a while, something slides through. But still much better than having to do those yourself. We don't complete an official roll forward of retained earnings, so we never actually go in and close and physically clear out everything from our P&L accounts and move that. It's more of a soft close where you kind of like in a couple other softwares where, hey, I want to run a P&L as of this, it'll show you that, or a balance sheet will show you your current retained earnings balance from that particular piece, or for my not-for-profits that are on here, your net assets. Year-end preparation. First thing we want to do is close subledgers. Again, I know some of you on here know all about this because I know I emphasize this, but most of us emphasize this throughout. We want to close our subledgers, our AR, our AP, as we go along. You can close it for one entity at a time, or you can create entity groups for you multi-entity people and say, I want to close all of my Pennsylvania entities, which are probably none or one or two, at one shot. You can do that as well. It is best practice to close monthly or quarterly. Again, close as you go. You're going to hear that a couple times throughout here because we highly encourage that. Now, some people I know take that to extremes. They're like, oh, it's day one, we got to close. Talk to your accounting team and your implementer about best practices for when to close, other than close monthly, quarterly, close as you go. Some people never close, and some people only close yearly. However, remember that we can go in and close just as easy as we can go in and open it if we need to for that 1 or 2 transactions that surprises us. So you can see in here, this is an example of accounts payable. Click on your accounts payable tab, go to the subledger, click close, pick the location or the entity group, and select the time period of which we're closing. In this case, we're closing for month end December 2022, which if that's the first time we've ever closed, it will close everything from that point prior. Okay. All right. You also want to reconcile your subledgers to your control accounts. For reconciliation purposes, you want to run your subledger reports by posting date. Super important there. Run it by posting date. Make sure that the selected date for the report is as GL posting date. Again, I know I said that several times. It's very important because every year I get somebody, at least one person, who says my vending doesn't tie out to my AP account, and we'll go in and look, and they were using the due date. Okay, so for this particular purpose, we want to use the same dates for both pieces, and we want to make sure that our vendor aging report or customer aging report both tie out to our balance, general ledger balances for those accounts. Okay. If there is an issue, and for those of you who ever have had that issue, you know you never want to live through that again. It is horrible to try to find the issues when the aging doesn't tie out to the GL account balance. So what we want to do is we want to go in. This is a great time to go in and make sure our accounts payable, our accounts receivable, our retained earnings accounts, all are marked with disallowed direct posting, meaning that we can't post a journal entry directly to those accounts so that those things don't happen. Now, some of you may be on a third-party AR system. For example, a lot of medical practices, they have all of their stuff in another system, and we're just bringing data in. At that point, we're not really utilizing the aging out of Intacct in some of those cases. So therefore, we can't turn that on. So there may be a reason why we can't turn that control account on. But again, best practices, unless you're one of those people and you know who you are, you should make sure that those buttons are checked. Okay. Now, again, for anybody who's in the middle of an implementation, check with your implementation specialist, because if we're bringing in balances for history, that's not going to work for us. So just keep that little piece in mind. If you're not quite live yet, make sure you check with your implementation specialist before turning that on. Otherwise, when they do some of their history imports, unfun things are going to happen. Okay, still no comments, no questions. Hopefully everybody's there. Try to keep this interactive. If anybody has anything that they want, talk a little bit more in depth on or anything like that. Fiscal year-end close process. Closing of periods is super easy. This looks very, very similar to what we just went over in Subledger. Again, we're just going to keep hammering this because we want you to close your books. Okay, it's easy as going to General Ledger, all books, click close. Again, very similar like we showed in the AP. Choose the entity or entity group that you want to close and select the date and close. This not only closes your general ledger, but it also closes all your subledgers as well. Now, there are times when we create our fiscal reporting periods. What it does is when we initially do it, it creates everything back to the earliest transaction date, and then it goes to 2 years in advance. So what happens is every once in a while, we get to the point where, hey, I want to run a report for 2023. I don't have 2023 available to me. That's going to happen to you every 2 years. So this is the process for taking care of that. What you want to do is go into company, import data, So it's company setup import data, or a lot of you probably have import data favorited because we love our imports in Intacct. And then you want to go down to the general ledger section and click on the default under reporting periods. That will give you 2 years of periods at a time. Now, I do have a couple people that I know that have gone in there and said, I don't want to deal with this. So I went in there and clicked it 15 times. That's great. You're set for the next 30 years. However, if you need that drop down to find a particular period range, that gets a little extensive. You're going to deal with that anyway when it gets to that point, but just keep in mind that you can go out and do that, but you're also going to have a lot more stuff in your window whenever you're trying to select reporting periods. Okay. So then once you do that, you can go to reports, and in that third column tab, you can go to your reporting periods, and you will now see that, hey, for Todd's company here, we now have 23 and 24s that we can use. All right. So again, year-end close, things to remember. You can use the checklists in Intacct, or you can do this outside of it. You can go to general ledger checklists, develop and document a close process, define the tasks and responsibility to team members, set due dates, assign responsibilities. And because if I did your implementation, you're like, what are these checklists? Just so you know, the checklists themselves aren't that old. So they may not have existed when you were doing your implementation. However, going into the help menu and going to checklists, there's a very good documentation on step-by-step process for setting those up. Lock it down, retain earnings. Again, you do not need to do any adjustments to retain earning. The system will do that for you. Again, make sure you can go back to slide 8 when this is all up and you download this and you live by this and you re-watch this video and go through the slideshow like every month because it was so great. If I wish I had sound so people could say, yeah, right, no problem. We got that. But you can go back to slide 8 on disallow direct posting. Again, as I mentioned, make sure retain earnings is there. If need be, if something comes in late, like, hey, I got to get this bill in here, but I don't really want to do an adjusting journal entry. I just want to get it in the right way. You can reopen, provided you have the permissions assigned to you for reopening periods. You can reopen that, do what you need to do, and then close it. Okay. And again, unless you specifically went over anything with your implementation person or you have a specific need, there is no need to touch retained earnings or perform an official close process. You do want to make sure you reconcile your subledgers. And if you run into any problems, provided that it's not that my AP aging doesn't match AP, because that's hard to fix at times. Sometimes it's super quick, but sometimes it's really hard. We're here to help. Okay, RKL's here to help, even if it is that AP aging doesn't tie out to AP, but hopefully that doesn't happen. All right. Everybody's favorite topic, 1099 preparation and processing. All my AP people are going, don't remind me of that. All right, no problem. 1099 preparation and processing. The forms are now available, I believe. You can go to the home screen. From your home page, you can go down to the resources section and click on checks and supplies. From there, you want to click tax forms. To my left on the screen is a list of all the tax forms that are available for you. Or if you don't want to do that, you can go directly to www.formsforintacct.com. This is the time where we find out if any of our vendors we set up throughout the year, we forgot to mark them as a 1099 vendor, which really makes everybody angry later on. So hopefully this doesn't fall into your lap, and as you've created any new vendors throughout the year, you've already marked them and set them up for 1099s. You can sleep for the next 5 minutes if that's you. However, a lot of times there's somebody who sneaks a vendor in and doesn't do that for you just because they like to keep us on our toes in January. Okay, so what would I do then? I would go into the accounts payable, the setup vendors tab, and then go into the additional information tab, flag them as 1099 eligible. Once you click that box, put the check marks in there and save it, Once you reopen that vendor, then you'll see on the right-hand side here, we have, if I can find my mouse here, there we go. You'll see over here, we now have the ability to select which 1099 form for which entity. Maybe it's a scenario where, hey, I need to update that slide. Go ahead and call me out on that. I just saw that because box 7, 1099 miscellaneous is not a thing anymore. Shame on me. I'll make that fix for next year. But we could say, you know what, maybe for 3 of our entities, this vendor is non-employee compensation, but we have another entity that actually does rentals from them. So you can set it up for each entity and how they are assigned a 1099 for that piece. All right. What happens if that happens? Well, you can, through Intacct, you can go in and say, hey, go in and make all the transactions for this vendor 1099. It'll go back through and update those for you. That's in your import data. That's probably one of the reasons why you have import data starred, because it's a great thing to have. Now, if you're new to Intacct and you started mid-year, you're going to have some initial values that you need to bring in from your legacy system. So what you want to do from that standpoint is edit that 1099. Once you have the form name designed, once you have the box designed, once you have the entity filled out, initial values for 2022, whichever box that is in this example. This one slide was updated and has non-employee compensation box 1. So in here, I would put the amount from my legacy system in there. And then that will have all that way at the end of the year, that in conjunction with any transactions that we had in our system, we should, in theory, and you can't see me doing the quotes, in theory, you should have the right amount for that, provided everybody flags 1099 transactions correctly throughout the year, which always happens for everybody. Sorry, that was a lot of stuff. Need a quick sip of water. I catch my breath, settle yours down from hearing me talk. Get into the next topic here. All right, as a tip, remember to only enter the calendar year-to-date 1099s for you fiscal year-end people. Just remember 1099s run on calendar. And note this screen only appears after you click save, after you checkbox that this vendor is a 1099 vendor. That I mentioned on the last slide, just re-mentioning it again. All right, next slide. So Intacct for this quarter moved our 1099 printing, export, and that information from over on the far right side for you veteran Intacctors. Used to be over here. They now brought her down here. Your 1099 report is still from here. Accounts payable all over here. It gives you a 1099 report. However, our printing, if we're doing the printing directly from Intacct, is here, or our export, if we're sending it to a third-party system, is there as well. Okay. When printing 1099s, just keep in mind you do have the option to exclude credit card transactions by checking this box here at the bottom. Okay. Creating a 1099 file. Go to the create screen, enables you to create a data file that you can send to a third-party service that specializes in printing, mailing out, and uploading for those who have to do it electronically, 1099 forms. Am I somebody who has to do it electronically? If you're not sure, we'll discuss that later on. Just a teaser for the frequently asked questions so that hopefully nobody leaves early. All right, these services are also file the required information, as I was saying. You can export the offline in either CSV or Excel file format. Again, remember Intacct. This is like the one time we don't really like Excel all the time. CSV is usually what we do. However, you can export it both ways and see what works best for you. Or you can do it data online in one of the following formats as a CSV, Excel, XML, or XSD, depending on what's required from your third party if you're using a third party. All right. New for this year, e-file 1099s powered by Tax Bandits through Intacct. And my sound effect didn't work, so probably nobody heard the applause that was going in there. This is new for this year, but it is a limited release, so it was a first come, first serve sign up. but that's okay if it's not going to be us this year. We'll let everybody else work out the kinks so that next year, if we're interested in this, we'll have smooth sailing. Again, Intacct is excited to announce their 1099 e-filing integration with a trusted partner of Tax Bandits. Tax Bandits is an authorized by the IRS as a 1099 e-filer provider. Eligibility for this limited release is based on a first-come, first-served basis. This means that unless you've already signed up for this, it most likely will be ready for you next year. Okay. The next few slides are just a little bit about that. It's like I said, I haven't gotten a chance to go through it because it's early release. But wanted to give you an overview of this for something to keep in mind for next year if it gets good reviews, which we should know by like Q2. You can skip the manual 1099 forms and send information directly to Tax Bandits, where you then prepare it and submit it to the IRS. They automatically verify your tax information against IRS requirements, so you should be able to avoid any filing in corrected forms after that. So from what I gather from that, it's going to validate the data, make sure everything's the way it should be before we send it out, as long as we have the right balances on there. Which, because every time we add a new vendor throughout the year, we go through and set them up correctly right from the beginning, that never happens. All right. I'm not going to read over this screen. This is just a snapshot from the Q4 release notes that discuss this. This is kind of just a little bit about how the process works from Intacct to Tax Bandits for that upload. And again, you'll be able to download the PDF once the marketing team puts it up on the blog, and you can have the slide for that. All right. Let's talk about some of the frequently asked questions that we've accumulated over the years. First one is, what if we have a third party print and mail our forms? Again, this is just going to reiterate what we talked about earlier. You want to create a 1099 file and then export that data. If you want to see the amounts paid to vendors along with the 1099 categories, run the 1099 report, and that'll show you all the data. What if we have 250 or more 1099s? If you have more, it's required to file them electronically. Answering that question that I brought up earlier for you guys, how do I know if I need to file electronically? I did confirm that it is still 250, although I have a feeling that someday in the future it may become less. There are third-party programs that will help you file electronically. These can be found in the marketplace. However, if that's intriguing to you, Tax Bandits, I believe, is one of those pieces in there. You may want to look towards that to have a smoother shot for next year. And that is the website for the 1099s. What tax forms do Intacct support? You can see the list right there. The key thing is that as of time's fading away, I think it was 2 years ago now, boy, time flies, the 1099 NEC, that was the first year for that, so that is good. How do I update or change the amount of a 1099 vendor? So for the people who aren't you guys, who had somebody who added a vendor throughout the year but didn't mark them correct, and we need to make an adjustment to that, you can go into AP, select the vendor, additional information tab, click on that 1099 form link, and select the correct 1099 year and entity, and select the 1099 form from this vendor that shows you the amounts you want to add to the vendors, and save changes. So from that screen, that initial amount, we can put in an amount in there if we need to make that adjustment, both a positive or a negative amount. Hence the note, in order to reduce the vendor's 1099 amount, a negative number can be entered. All right. Year-end resources. So you can always email us, support@RKLE Solutions, or reach out to the person that you typically work with Intacct. Sage Intacct Online is a great place for help. Up in the top right corner, click on help. Help on this page. If you're on that page that you need help with is great, or just help in general. Either way is good. If you can't get the answer in there, you can always go to Sage Intacct Community. Again, from your home screen at the bottom, the right corner, resources, you can click on community. That'll take you to the Intacct community page where you have the search menu. You can put that information in there. Okay. Still no questions, comments, or concerns in the chat. Give you guys a quick minute if anybody's as slow a typer as I am. If you have any questions that you would like to be brought up, put them in the chat. Otherwise, still waiting a minute. I'm pausing for dramatic effect. We'll move on. For those of you who are completed with your integration, you can always reach out to Lisa Gillette, your customer account manager, for any questions, especially next year. If you're interested in that 1099 filing, you can reach out to her, get pricing on that. Okay. We have some year-end deals and reminders with Flowcast, Lease Query, and Avalara. There, you can ask your RKL representative for more information on any of these promotions. I'll pause again for a chance for you to look over that if that's anything you're interested in. And again, you'll be able to download this and have that information for you if need be. This is the last time I'm going to comment. There's still no questions in the chat, which means either I did a phenomenal job or your implementation specialist did a phenomenal job. It is the season of boosting everybody, so I'm going to go with we did a phenomenal job. All right, I got a reaction. Awesome. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. RKLE Solutions help desk is a great place to ask questions. At the support email, you can always reach out to your implementation specialist. I promise you, you're probably still talking with them from time to time. I know I try to keep connected with the customers that I've worked with just to make sure things are going along. Thank you very much for attending, and happy holidays.